But I like it. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. I'm Sue Greenberg with Volunteer Lawyers and Accountants for the Arts, and we're small but mighty. Really glad that everybody is here. And this is the Regional Arts Commission. I'm sure people have been here before, but we're very grateful to be here. Our offices are upstairs, and so we have the good fortune of having nice office space and also access to these nice meeting rooms. So, really glad everybody came out tonight. And when the ghost ship fire happened, we see tragedies every day, I think, in the news, but that one really hit me in a way that maybe some others don't, partially because it was artists, but also because it reminded me that there's this tension going on all the time between affordability and safety. And how do we kind of recognize that both those things are part of the life of many artists? So that said, though, I think that there's some common sense steps that can be taken, and that's what we're going to be hearing about tonight to prevent problems, and also some resources, and that's going to be what Felicia starts us out with, that you may not know about as artists, where you could get some assistance, and then we're going to send everybody home who wants one with a fire extinguisher, or maybe two.
Is it a raffle?
No, you showed up, you get it.
Door prize.
So, yeah, it's a door prize. So having said all that, we thank RAC. Wanted to thank Joe from Critical Mass, and Sarah. I have a typo in the agenda. Sorry about that. All the art, not all the arts. I'm used to typing arts all the time. And then, did Matt Chase walk in? There was a lawyer who was going to come by. Maybe he'll still show up. His name is Matt Chase. And he would be here to answer legal questions if they happen. And then also, I found these nice architects. Yeah, these nice architects from AIA, the American Institute of Architects. So I wanted to thank Michelle, who runs that organization. So I said we had a full agenda, and it starts with Felicia, and it ends with a lot of beer. We have more beer than fire extinguishers. So
maybe you should hand them out now.
Well, we can. And if we want to get them early, we can. But we're going to let Felicia speak first, and I give it to you.
All right, thank you. So welcome everyone to the Regional Arts Commission, and I'm going to assume that most of you have been here before. Is that correct? So I'm Felicia Shaw, I'm the Executive Director here at the Regional Arts Commission, and today I'm wearing two hats. First is the Director of RAC, which is the largest funder of the arts in the region. We were formed in 1985. Our funding derives from hotel motel taxes. So when your friends and family come in town, don't let them sleep on your couch. Demand that they stay in a hotel. No Airbnb, because a portion of their, that little extra tax that they tack onto their bill goes to us. And in turn, we take that money and we fund it right back out to individual artists as well as arts and cultural organizations. So it's pretty cool. And this is our building, and we're up on the third floor, but there are other rooms here that if you ever wanted to have a nonprofit event would be accessible to you, as well as our gallery. So my other hat is as a member of the board of CERF Plus. Now, I first learned about CERF Plus because of a fire. In 2007, I was still living in Southern California, and it was an event. It was the largest historic wildfire in our country. Millions and millions of acres of land were burned, some in urban areas, but many in some what we call the rural areas, suburban areas where artists lived. And as a result of that wildfire event, I was working for the San Diego Foundation at that time. We received, like in 30 days, $10 million from donations from all over the country. People were trying to help out, so it just landed in our laps. And our job was to help people recover from the tragedy. And because I was the Director of Arts and Culture, my job was to help artists. I had not a clue as to how to do that. For one thing, we weren't really funding artists, but artists are people. But I had to find them, figure out how to vet them, thinking about your idea of vetting artists, and then figure out how best to help them. And the way that we decided that we could be of most assistance was to help them replace equipment and tools. Because once your equipment or your tools are burned up in a fire, your kiln, tools that maybe took you years and years to collect, you don't buy just one thing, you buy it and you buy something else, you buy something else, your camera equipment, all those things that are the tools of your trade, then you can't work anymore. So the idea was we need to get artists back to work as quickly as they can. And so because I didn't know how to do it, I had to look across the country, and I called the National Endowment for the Arts, and I called Americans for the Arts. And every time I called, somebody said, you need to call CERF. And so I arrived at CERF, and they kind of took me under their wing, and over the course of the next year, I was able to help about 25 different artists in San Diego County do exactly that. Many of them totally had their studios burned completely to the ground. One woman, I'll never forget the story of her life. She was getting ready for a show, and she was a sculptor, and she had a studio, more like a compound, and she had created all this work. That mean literally, she was getting ready to ship this work out. She even had one piece that had been sold and she'd been paid for it. Okay, thousands of dollars. And this fire was a very fast-moving fire because we have all these canyons in San Diego, and it came up over the hill. She was able to get out with her dog, but everything that she owned, all of her work, all of the maquettes, the records, invoices, she even had to remember, who did I sell that to? All of it was burned to the ground. So it was a lesson for me, but it also ignited a passion for me in helping artists recover from disasters, having seen firsthand how devastating it is. And you know, you think about things that could happen to you. Maybe you're in a car accident or something like that, and you can build your car over. But we're talking about when artists lose record of their history of their work. You can't get that moment back when you made that thing. That happened at a particular moment, and you will never make that thing again. But artists do recover. So, next slide. So what's at the center of this passion that I have about artists being prepared is it's all about disaster planning. It's about helping you as artists build a more resilient career. Resilient meaning it's not if a disaster happens to you, it's when. Giving you the tools so that you can recover quicker and get back to work. Whether it's a flooded basement that destroys the work you've been getting ready to take to a buyer, or the crazy boyfriend that comes in and erases your hard drive, because those are disasters too. If somebody wants to just upend your life, you have to have a backup plan. So you want to ask yourself today, are you prepared? And if the answer is no, what would you need to do to be ready for the next disaster or an emergency? So think to yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most prepared ever. You have photos taken of your work, it's been archived, you've backed up your computer, you have proper insurance, your home is really safe, you're not storing things. On a scale of 1 to 10, think about where you are on that spectrum right now. And then when we finish, I want you to think about whether you think you can turn that number into a higher number. So if you're at a 3, after thinking about what we can do together, maybe you can move it up to a 5 or a 6 or a 7. So next slide. So CERF Plus exists for a reason. We're a national nonprofit arts organization started by artists for artists. CERF Plus serves artists by providing a safety net to support strong and sustainable careers. So it's all about you as a professional and how we can make sure that you continue to do the work that you are intended to do. Next slide. It's a leading organization dedicated to artist emergency readiness and relief. So we get you ready, but we also understand when things happen, we may have to come in and provide some assistance. We provide resources and information, education and training, emergency readiness, advocacy. We even work on policies to make sure that you're treated the same way as other small businesses. So we work at the federal level. Career protection tools for artists at all stages of your career. Next slide. So our signature program is the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, which provides grants and loans to eligible artists who work in craft disciplines. And those are the artists who have had recent career-threatening emergencies. Craft provides financial assistance to artists so they have funds to begin their recovery within 2 weeks of a submitted application. And so we're focused on really quick turnaround of these applications, because when people are facing a life-changing event, and sometimes it's really your health, you know. We're trying to get money into your hands right away so you can pay your rent. So we're talking about some of the issues. Grants are up to $6,000, no interest loans up to $9,000, and then brokered assistance, donated supplies or equipment, booth fee waivers, so that you can get to that festival where who's a jewelry maker here? You're a jewelry maker, right? And you know that there's one time during the year when you make practically all your money because you're going to those fairs. And can you imagine if you had worked all summer making your jewelry and you're getting ready to go to those holiday fairs and everything burns up, and that's the money that you're going to live on all next year. That's a disaster. Next slide. So what type of emergencies and disasters impact most of our beneficiaries? Believe it or not, it's not fires. It's illness or injury. You getting sick and not being able to work. You do welding, something happens, there's an accident, or something happens with your eyesight. It's mostly illness or injury, and then it's followed by a lot of other smaller issues. Fire is a big one. We tend to think a lot about those big disaster, tornadoes, hurricanes that make the national news, but believe it or not, they're pretty rare. They're becoming more frequent, but the things that impact us most often is just our own bodies, and we can't prevent that at all. So we conducted a survey and found that the majority of emergencies result from things that happen to you while you're working, followed by some type of event that destroys the place where your work is created. It's the things that happen to your studio. So if you can't get into your studio to work, that means you've got to find another place to work. You know, you may not have another room in your house that you can move into, and so your work is interrupted. But fire, I have to say, ranks among the most common natural or human caused disaster affecting artist careers. So next slide. So if you go on our website, it has lots and lots of information, so I encourage you to do that, www.cerfplus.org. It provides readiness and response information and resources for a variety of disaster types geared towards the artist audience. So we've even, kind of dissected it down to certain types of disasters: tornadoes, wildfires, fires. The wildfires are different because they get everybody. Your house could burn down in the middle of the block, and it wouldn't be as disastrous. And when there's a wildfire, it could take out the store where you buy things. It could take out, the gas station. It takes out everything. Roads, if you can imagine that. Power outages, that's a disaster. You need power. Snow, ice, you can't get out of your house. You can't get to your gallery, and you need to sell your work. Floods, we know what floods do. We have a lot of those in Missouri. Next slide. So, unfortunately though, fires have affected the homes, studios, artwork, and lives of many artists, from students to seasoned professionals. some of the recent examples in 2013 at Pratt Institute, they destroyed the studios and students' artwork, and you kind of see just what it looks like. A lot of times we go out and we show pictures, we'll show it before, and then we'll show it after. And this is not recoverable. You're not going to go in there and say, oh, well, let me just sweep that up. You're not sweeping that up. This past month, just recently, a blacksmith by the name of Steve Bronstein, his Vermont-based studio actually just burned to the ground. And then last summer, Ben Badansky lost everything in a studio fire in his LA studio. Next slide, please. So some of the characteristics of fire, this is Fire 101. Fire spread quickly. There's no time to gather valuables or to make a phone call typically. You think you can, like I'm gonna call over there, but usually it's time to go. In just 2 minutes, a fire can become life-threatening. In 5 minutes, a residence can become engulfed in flames. Heat and smoke from fire can be more dangerous than the flames themselves. And then fire also produces poisonous gases that make you disoriented and drowsy. So instead of being awakened by a fire, you may fall into a deeper sleep. Next slide. So some of the studio safety tips that I'll share with you, and I'm sure that there are many more. You want to install, obviously, and maintain smoke alarms, making sure you change out those batteries. CO2 detectors are pretty inexpensive. Fire extinguishers, which you're going to get today, and sprinklers. Considering escape ladders if your residence or studio space has more than one level. Insulating your chimneys and place spark arresters on top of your chimneys. The chimney should rise at least 3 feet higher than your roof. It should be right on top of your roof. You want to place those space heaters at least 3 feet away from flammable materials, and make sure the floor and the adjacent walls are properly insulated. And you want to inspect those heating units from time to time. Then make sure your windows are not painted or nailed shut. I was thinking about my mother's 86, and every time I go over to visit her, I call it barricaded in her house. And by the time my mother gets this big set of keys, and I can hear her inside because she has locked herself inside the house, and I hear her jingling, and then she unlocks that door, and then there's another door, like a, what do you call them?
Storm door.
Storm door. She's unlocking that. And I said, Mom, you would burn up in here. How would you get out? It took you 10 minutes and you're just inside the house. Now, you're not 86, but can you imagine if you have some Byzantine way of entering and exiting your house, or there's things in the way and you need to get out quickly? You don't think about it until that time comes, or pets, and you're trying to get your pets, and you've got a big ring of keys that you're trying to navigate. Next slide. So, given that, you want to have a fire safety plan and practice it, even if you live alone or just with one other person. Talk about it together in terms of what would happen if the fire started downstairs and we were mostly upstairs, or what if it happened upstairs and we're in the basement and we really don't have a way to get out of the basement. Think about it ahead of time. Properly mark and know the location of all the exits in your house. What could you easily navigate? I got stuck out on the third floor balcony of my house. I was out there plucking my eyebrows because I wanted to have natural light. And I didn't want the mosquitoes to go into the house, so I turned around and shut the door. And I realized I was locked up out on the third floor of my balcony. So I'm like, hello, someone come save me. So the firemen came, now they didn't have to put the hook and ladder up. The reason I'm telling you the story is that in my mind, because I saw this on TV, I thought maybe I could jump off the third floor balcony onto the roof of my garage and roll off. And then I would be, I was imagining I could do this. But in reality, I don't think that was going to work. If that was my escape plan, if there was a fire, because I'm on the third floor, I really don't have a way out of my house. I don't have one, other than what I just described to you. So I need to figure out one of those those little ladders you go over.
Home Depot's got them.
The little ladder you go over, and but the idea that I could, if I just jump, and then I'll go onto my garage roof, and I'll just roll down like I saw on the action movie. No, okay. I need a plan. I need to put an escape map near the doors if you live in an apartment building, so you know which way you're gonna go. Trash, that might ignite on a hot day when you're not there. Be extremely careful when using and storing flammable liquids. I know a lot of you work with turpentine and things like that. You need them, cleaning fluids. Maybe you used a rag one day and you set it aside, hot day, and there you go. Those extension cords and outlets, when I was in San Diego, we're not quite as old as St. Louis, but you guys have homes here that are like 1800. They don't have up to code. You got things hooked to things, and it's not a good idea having bare wires touching each other. And then this last one, I'm hearing you talk about you didn't want to invite the fire safety people. I was saying, ask your local fire department to conduct a safety inspection. Hey, Mr. Fire Guy, come in and tell me if I've done anything wrong. I know that's not going to happen, but in the best world, that would be what you should do to get some advice. You could say, hypothetically, if I did this, what do you think would happen? Anyway, the next slide. I should send you the deck, so if anyone wants to keep this. We have a fire safe inspection safety checklist on our website, and you can download that. This is a great, simple place to start. So when I said on a scale of 1 to 10 and you feel like you're at a 3, do some of these things on here, and then your comfort level will go right up. You'll be like a 5 or 6. And that's free on our website too. Some goodies I have, the studio protector. We have some other stuff that pertains to other things that keep you resilient. We like stuff. The studio protector idea was that you could hang this up on your wall, and there's a little pockets and circles, and you would say, in this instance, what would I do for a tornado? And they would have these ideas and circle it around. An artist designed this because they thought it was fun. I don't know anybody who will actually play with it, but you take it home and see if it's helpful. If there's some good information in the studio protector. We were selling these for like $15 for a while, but you can have one now. You're good. There's a brochure about business insurance. I know it sounds like business insurance, but you need that. It does pay off on some certain things, and because of that advocacy I was telling you about, the federal government has created legislation that makes artists have some of the same rights as small businesses. But it's very, very tough, I think, a lot of times for artists to get claims filled through insurance. You're saying, they just, it's hard for you to prove that you're professional, and that's always the issue. So business insurance, and then these little cards about readiness and relief, and it's all free for you to have, and we'll make sure we keep a few out and downstairs so you can take them with you or send them to your friends. So I think that's all I wanted to say. So where do you start? Start by preparing for emergencies, thinking about not if, but when. Set up a safe studio and studio practice, so think about safety all the time. Determine what kind of business insurance needs you need that you have, even at the most minimal level. Have a disaster buddy, so maybe if you do it together, maybe you could attack one part of your house. Okay, so today we're going to do a closet. Have someone come over with you, and then you can help your friend do their closet, or we're going to clean out this area. And by having someone who has a set of your keys, maybe you could give them a backup disk or thumb drive of some of your work. Just try not to keep everything that you have in your house, because when your house burns down, where would you go? So when I got locked out on the 3rd floor and I couldn't get down, and then the firemen came and they were wondering how they were going to get me down. You know how I got down? I called my interior designer, my decorator. He had a key. And he came over and he let me in. Just think, if I hadn't given him a key, they would have had to break the front door of my condo and then come up and break down my door. That would have been at least a couple of $1,000. So just because I gave my key to somebody else. How simple is that, right? Document and back up your portfolio and your records. Back up. Inventory your supplies. This is a really, really, really good one. So you got all this equipment, photographic equipment. Just take a picture of it every now and then and put it in the cloud. Don't put it on your phone because your phone can burn up. But that will help you with your insurance claims, that you actually had those things. They won't believe you otherwise. And then create a network and a community of support. It has been a pleasure sharing this with you. And it's been a pleasure for me to serve on this board. It is the least sexy thing that you could ever do, to serve on an organization's board that all you do is think about disasters. But some of the stories that people tell us when we show up in those times of need, whether you found out you have cancer and you really don't have proper insurance and you want to save your house, it really, really does matter. So I encourage all of you to take your disaster planning seriously. Use CERF Plus as a resource. They're there for you. And think about keeping yourself safe and resilient. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. We're going to talk a lot about similar ideas about how to keep you safe. And this is all practical stuff from our experience and our work and make environment. We used to live in University City. We had a 900 square foot house, which we loved. We fixed everything in it. It was great. And then we were talking one day at a holiday party about we really need more space. Every time I make something, I take over the whole first floor. Thomas does his woodworking outside and on the driveway. So we started talking about wanting something, and the person who threw the party was an acquaintance, happens to be a real estate agent. So she started sending us listings. And then we actually started driving around, take our bikes, ride through neighborhoods to find different places to that we could live in and do our work in. And so we ended up finding a very cool building down in South City. We're in Carondelet neighborhood now. And we've lived there now since 2011. So this is a 100-year-old telephone exchange. I think I can see some people out here who remember the dial telephone. Well, this was before the dial telephone. This is where the lady operators plugged in the calls. So we live there. We live in this back corner here. We've fixed the windows in that corner, and we're working on the rest of the place.
So in that, we took one room that was, as Sue pointed out in the corner, this is what it looked like before, and
That's Mary.
that's our real estate. And so it's really high ceiling, 17 feet tall. So this one room was about 600 square feet. And then we were able to turn it into this. So we're able to split it in half and put our bedrooms and closet up above, kitchen over there, and then that tucked behind our bathroom and so the library. So that's upstairs. This is just to give you a sense of what our space can be.
And it took us about a year to build it, so we've been living there since. And now there's the whole rest of the building to do, which everyone asks us, when will you be finished? Never. And we call it the F word.
And done is a four-letter word.
Yeah.
But outside, this is what the rest of the space looks like. That's sort of the shop area.
It's great. It's a concrete building as a utility, so the building can't burn, which is a good thing. Because a lot of the buildings we looked at were the heavy timber wood frame, and they rotted and they had some problems. So this one, nothing's going to go wrong with the building. We can certainly just store our stuff.
And this is our second floor. It's all very open. And this is where the operators actually pulled, the cords, and long rows of them up there. We're going to move up here eventually, and the space down below will be a guest apartment. We're not sure what it's going to be. Sue wants to rent it. But
I like the idea of money coming in.
So that was us, and now we want to talk about things that can help you. Like I mentioned during our intro, I like to make a lot of stuff. I do metal work and woodworking. Not in our place, but I've taken classes doing glass blowing on a 3rd degree, and I'm interested in learning everything, doing everything. So we're going to title this next section, Try Not to Die. So not just fire, but just general health things. There are things that can kill you slowly that you may not be aware of.
So as architects, our daily job is to follow the rules, to work with the code officials, the fire marshals, the building inspectors, all the people that have all these rules that you have to follow. And we know what those rules are, they're part of what we do. But we wanted to talk about practical, everyday things that will just make your life a little better. So exits. Exits are the first thing you should think about. How do you get out in an emergency? What's the first thing you hear in an airplane every single time? How to get out in an emergency. Well, that's the most important thing, and probably why a lot of people died at the Oakland places. There wasn't adequate and familiar exits. So in commercial buildings, they make you put those glowy red signs everywhere. You don't necessarily have to do that if you live there because you're there every day, but you should get into a routine of knowing where they are. So windows, think about windows. As long as they open, those windows can be exits. And oftentimes in residences, that's how the firemen get in, or they come through the windows. So making sure you know that they work and how they work is one way to start. And don't put crap in front of the exit. So you got to be able to get clear to them. And it's really easy when we have crap everywhere, but we keep a 6-foot path through it. And that's really good, especially if you're running around at nighttime, you don't crash into stuff too, but in the fire, you have a clear path to get to the door or the window. And even though you put stuff in the path, make sure it's wide enough that you can easily run through there. Keep a key somewhere, a spare key near the door. Now we have glass doors with these really ugly bars on them that somebody put at some point, but we keep a spare key out of reach of that window, but where we always put it back in the same place, so we know when we need to get out, there's a key that's going to be there to get us out, but we can keep the building secure. Don't block the exits with coats and carpet cleaners either. So it's sort of just keep things away from the path. So simple things.
So Felicia mentioned oily rags. If you're working with solvents, things like that, especially if you have a pile of them, they literally can spontaneously combust through oxidation. Especially as the temperature in your studio gets warmer and drier, they can literally just catch fire all by themselves. Put a little sunbeam on there, it gets even worse. So store them in some kind of metal container if you're unable to clean them right away. Then Felicia also mentioned about storing your solvents. You can spend a lot of money on fire cabinets, right? So even better than nothing, I found this old cabinet at an auction for $15, and so I store, although it's not fire rated and it doesn't have all the warnings on it, I keep all my solvents out of the way in this one metal cabinet. At least it would be contained inside there. And then electrical fires are really bad, and so you can just go online and see all kinds of fires that happen because of some electrical problem. According to the NFPA, 25% of the time the fires are due to some kind of electrical issue. And so how many of us have done this, right? Not good. A little sparking can go on behind there, you get overloads. Tripping a breaker is no big deal, but if you've got loose wires inside the socket and you overload it, you'll start getting little sparks where the current is jumping.
And those are usually behind a box or some other burnable thing, so that's going to cause the whole place to go up potentially.
The thing on the left should never be in your studio, right? So those are meant to plug in your clock radio or tiny lamp or anything like that. Never use those for anything powered, motorized in your studio.
They overheat and they melt and then start fires.
And Felicia mentioned this too, don't overload them, don't plug them together, but how do you know how much is enough? Every cord sold in America has got a little sticker on it. See that 13A, that means that cord itself can power 13 amp equipment.
And everything that plugs in has a sticker on it that tells you how many amps it draws. So it's just a math problem.
So if you were running this circular saw, it takes 13 amps, so you'd be safe with that cord. These things are not the cure-all either. You can't run 6 different tools on there at once. So you turn this guy over, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but that one's rated at 15 amps. So yes, it'll run that power tool, but you don't plug in a heater with it or a bunch of lights and things like that. So you need to be aware of how much load you're putting on it. And if you ever pick up an extension cord and it's warm, you've been overheating it, right? It's not supposed to be warmer than the air. And of course, this is an obvious thing. As your cords get damaged, you're going to start to expose the wires and then shorts, cause fires. And it's okay, this is a cord we have around a building, it's okay to store your cords coiled up, but don't use them coiled up. They create a magnetic field that collapses and is created and collapses 60 times a second. That's how AC works. And they get warm. So you will reduce the current you can run through them if you use it coiled. In fact, there's this product available that coils it neatly in a bucket. And it's their own label that says if you use it coiled, you can only use 9 amps on this guy. But if it's uncoiled and straight, 15 amps. You've all seen these things. This is somebody who used one of these wind-up things, coiled up, and it heated up and almost burned their house down. Here is an extension cord that was plugged into a dehumidifier in the basement, and the cord overheated. So make sure, if you're going to use something like a heater or an air conditioner unit or a dehumidifier, those things take a lot of load for those compressors in them. And they make special, they're fairly short, they call them air conditioner, or you've seen refrigerator extension cords. They're very heavy duty for that kind of thing.
So things that we make fire. That's just the nature of working with things like metals and all. So things spark. And don't do that. So if you're cutting with a chop saw, move the cardboard away from the saw. But it's surprising how much sparking can come, even small things. Cutting that pipe, you can see it's shooting a missile of sparks out the end. I mean, we're lucky we have a concrete building, so it can spark, but it's the stuff around where you're working is often the problem. So here, Tom he's cutting some pipes. He rigged up some tiles because there's some stuff over here. If the sparks hit the rest of the floor, it's okay. Just, either move the stuff away, and you really probably ought to wear more than old running shoes when you do that. Pay attention to what you're wearing and what's around you in the vicinity of what you're working on. Because even when you're standing there, it doesn't seem like it's sparking that much, but it really does. They do go a long way. Even just a wire grinder, just a wire brush on there was sending off some sparks off the pipes. So it's really more before you start doing something, just reconnoiter the area, shove some stuff out of the way, or just make sure you set up where you're going to do that often without the burning stuff there.
So if you do have a fire, know how to put one out and be able to put one out. So we have fire extinguishers all throughout our building, mount them pretty conspicuously. Can probably never have too many, right? And what's great is they last 5 or 6 years, good ones. And the other thing to make sure is get the right type. So if you just get ABC, you're going to be covered for most of your fires. If you don't get C, you won't be able to put out an electrical fire. So I think all of these back here are ABC, right?
It's a variety.
Oh, it's a variety. Okay, so you just need to be aware of when you're putting it in one area, if the kind of fire is going to be A or B or C. So.
And if you get the one that's it sometimes can make it worse, right? So
Yeah, actually, I think it's if you add water to, the dry on the end it says dry chemical, those won't make certain fires worse, and it's usually like if
the electrical.
And water on a grease fire makes it worse, that kind of thing like that. So The other thing is, go around, if you've got a bunch of extinguishers, just go around visually inspect them to make sure, they all have this little dial, and make sure they're in the green zone. And this one is at least 6 years old and it's still okay.
So when they have those announcements about check your smoke detector, check your fire extinguishers too. And it's not, and Felicia was saying, it's oftentimes it's the result of the injury that can be worse. And there's things you can do that can help prevent you from getting hurt and disabling you. So starting with very simple things, what you're breathing in, what you're making, even if it's wood particles can get in your lungs, and that can be really bad for you, give you asthma and everything. So anybody can find these little paper masks. They're cheap, you know, they're disposable. We just keep boxes of them around. We've more recently invested and upgraded on a better type because we had one of these and it was like, do you love me? Here, use my good respirator. So we each have our own respirators now. They're not that expensive. You can buy replaceable filters. You can wash them, so it's a little more sustainable. And they're more comfortable. They don't, those papery things always gave me a rash. So
yeah, we found that if you get a nice, comfortable respirator, you're going to wear it a lot. I mean, it doesn't fog up your glasses, and so, you know, every time we're making anything dusty.
Because sometimes you don't know what it is.
Yeah, this is in our basement, and we weren't sure what we were scraping up there, so. Yeah.
It's not good, whatever it was. It's
dried
not
up
good.
sewage, we
Yeah.
weren't sure.
Yeah, just even everyday cleaning up the stuff, you're going to kick up dust of particles that you could have thrown out previously.
And speaking of our basement, we had to get a little bit heavy duty on cutting out some pipes because there's no inspectors here. There was. Okay. This is my brother and I. We have a tunnel in our basement, so I had never been down there, and so we were going to do some exploring, and so we really suited up. We weren't sure what we were going to find. We didn't find anything interesting.
Protect your body, not just your lungs. So you were talking about.
So I was cleaning this ceiling with trisodium phosphate in preparation for painting, and I wanted to make sure that didn't splash anywhere. So I've got a face shield and big laboratory gloves. And this is some double duty. I was wearing a respirator, and then I had this big sock thing to keep paint off my head, and then glasses.
It looks like a monster.
Yeah. And then this is one of our favorite steel brushes, as we showed earlier, for cleaning steel and things. And wear a nice pair of leather gloves, and you can just hold on to things. And it's not fun when it hits you, but at least it's not going to rip your skin off. So gloves are pretty important. Same kind of thing here, wearing a leather glove while I'm sanding some bits of steel.
And we keep gloves around the tool, so it's convenient. You don't have to go run and get gloves. You can get the glove right when you need to use it.
I was cutting something on our roof, and I didn't know that it was melting the tar until I turned it, and it got hot, and what the heck, and it was building up this hot tar. If I hadn't been wearing a glove, I'm sure it would have burned my skin.
So remember to keep your gloves on. I was taking pictures of Tom doing something, and with my phone, so I took my gloves off, took a picture of Tom, and went back to putting a wrench on a bolt on the block, and should have put my gloves back on. So just sort of remember to do that.
So, and if you couldn't tell from the picture of the workshop, I don't like to throw anything away. So I extend the life of my gloves as they wear. I put the Gorilla Tape on them.
And we have different tiers of gloves. We have the new gloves.
Yeah. So I pass them on down. So when I'm picking up a lot of bricks or something like that, that wears out gloves quicker. So I don't need the detail of fingertip sensitivity. So that's some tips from us. If you have any questions, I'm glad to ask.
We're just going to keep pushing. Let's begin with why is it that architects are so concerned about safety? When we first talked on the phone, you said, oh, safety comes before design.
Yeah.
And I said, say that again?
Well, it's interesting, and first of all, I want to thank Tom and Sue because it really touched on a lot of the things that are so important about life safety in buildings. Just from a common sense standpoint, and made it clear that there are some really just passive things you can do to make your environment safer. Architects are charged with, first and foremost, health, safety, and welfare of the public. So our license says that we know how to get people out of a burning building. That's our number one duty. And most methods are passive. So we locate exits so that they're easily accessible. They're not, usually there's two if you're in a commercial space. So you almost always have two ways to get out of the building. As was mentioned before, windows are often used as a means of egress as well. As much as we like to consider ourselves artists and makers and designers, our first duty is to make sure that people are safe within buildings. And typically that's commercial buildings. There are different, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between a commercial space and a residential space. And I think as artists, a lot of you probably might live in the in-between and are utilizing spaces that are much like Tom and Sue, maybe were originally commercial spaces and might be hybrids between your live and work spaces.
So let's go back to that sealed window thing. And so someone's in a building, they're a renter. Who's responsible then? Is it the tenant or is it the landlord in that kind of situation? It's like, whose problem is it?
As both an architect and a landlord, and our attorney friend might be able to elaborate on this a little bit more, but certainly the owner of the property is first and foremost liable for ensuring a safe environment in a rented dwelling, any space. The onus on the tenant, though, is to do exactly what Tom and Sue said, is to keep a safe environment. Make sure you have clear paths to exits. Make sure you don't have flammable materials. I think that when you look at the ghost ship situation and you see, I saw videos that were prior to the fire, you see the masses of materials that were just stacked up. And the structures that they had built within it. And I understand artists want to create environments for themselves that are pleasing and that enable their work. But you really have to think about what these materials are capable of turning into if there is a fire. I remember when I was in the studio in architecture school, one of the studios, it wasn't one that I was in, took it upon themselves to build these structures within their classroom where they could sleep and elevate their desks, and they had all these levels, and it was a very cool environment, fun working space, and the city of Lawrence made them tear it all down because it was an absolute safety hazard. And we were all mad, and we thought it was unfair, and how could they make us do this? We're just trying to make, have a creative space to work and learn in. But it's truly something you have to be concerned about because your life and your livelihood are definitely at stake. So to get back to the question though, it really is incumbent upon the building owner to provide a safe environment, and it's also incumbent upon the tenant to make sure that they don't create an environment that puts themselves at risk.
Does anybody live in a building where you don't know who, like, really the building owner is, or work in a building that is sort of mysterious?
I can kind of speak to that perhaps a bit, just as a landlord lawyer. I mean, but the fact is, I get calls constantly by tenants, not necessarily like artists, just normal residential tenants and occasionally commercial tenants. And there's a lot of sketchy stuff that goes on with landlords. But one of the things that seems to be missed in all the talking here is there's safety issues and design issues and whatnot. But there's also contractual responsibilities. So from the perspective, and I represent primarily landlords because there's not much work representing tenants, but I do sometimes represent tenants, and the reality is that there's responsibilities on both sides. Insurance is something I don't think anybody really touched upon it, unless I was spacing out. Constantly, I get calls, and I've handled fires. We had a fire in my house. You talk about spontaneous combustion. I still remember as a kid, my brother had this paint by numbers. He's 3 years older than me. This was a long time ago. Paint by numbers t-shirt, threw it out in a metal container, metal garbage pail, steel, burned down our workshop, which is in the basement of our house, and firemen came and quickly put it out. But you can't mix chemicals like that. I don't know what the hell he put in there, but spontaneous combustion, and afterwards, my dad was like, "Oh, this and this. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. What the hell were you thinking?" Well, he was 10. I was 7. He wasn't thinking. 10-year-olds don't think. Adults don't think a lot. I go to court 5, 6, 7 times a month with many, many defendants coming in. Many of them, in all frankness, should not have signed contracts. They don't understand the contracts they signed, and these are the folks who come into eviction. There's problems, but in general, people don't realize it's up to the tenant to insure their property. It's up to the tenant to make sure that their space is safe. The thing about the wires and stuff, I appreciate it. It's all very good advice, but we're all adults here. If people don't know that, that's kind of scary. From my perspective, as someone who litigates and stuff. Now, I don't do fire cases, generally. We've got one, and frankly, just having the insurance doesn't mean you're going to be covered. You lose all your artwork, whatever. You should all be insured for that kind of stuff. But very often, insurance companies' first response is deny, 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 deny. If you're insured, most tenants don't insure themselves, except commercial. So the overwhelming majority of folks who have problems with the land, hey, my landlord's a slumlord and the place is flooding in the basement and all my stuff got destroyed, and well, did you have a renter's policy? No. Well, you're, pardon the expression, shit out of luck. You are out of luck. Why? Because the landlord's not responsible. But they're terrible. Yes, they probably are terrible. Let's assume they're the worst slumlord. In St. Louis, there's lots of them. Some of them are my clients. I'd say most of my clients are pretty good because of the bigger companies that actually know what they're doing. The little guys all suck. I'm a landlord. There have been certain instances where, holy cow, I'm that guy. Because stuff escapes notice. The tenant says, hey, got an issue with the deck. I text them back, yeah, we'll send somebody out. I forget about it. 4 months later, they're like, the deck's falling off the house, you never did anything. Terribly sorry, and in fact it was, but, was that on me? Yeah. Should they have reminded me again? Maybe. That's why I turned over my properties to a management company. But in all of this, your stuff is not protected by the landlord, and I don't remember, there's something that, landlord's responsible to a point. To a point. Because what the tenant does, ultimately, the tenant's property is going to be determined by how the tenant lives or works in their space. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about, with paint and this and that, might not be allowed in a rental situation, unless it's specifically allowed. And insurance may not cover it. A regular renter's policy is not going to cover it, and the landlord's policy doesn't cover the tenant, period. It covers the structure, and usually badly. The landlords, generally, whenever there's a problem with the tenant, a fire, and this and that, the landlord eats it a lot. They get some coverage, but not everything. So
I wanted to talk, because this segment was supposed to be about City Hall, a little bit about building inspectors and the fire inspectors. So what can, the building inspectors knock on the door and say, hey, I want to take a look?
Well,
And if they come, is one inspector consistent with what the other inspector might say?
well, certainly the first thing I want to say is that building inspectors are people, and they're not your enemy. And my greatest experience with building inspectors and plan examiners is within the city of St. Louis, which I assume most of you are city of St. Louis residents or close in. And first of all, no city inspector is ever going to just come knocking on your door. If they did, it's likely that someone's made a complaint that you've been doing work that is that is suspicious, and if you didn't get a permit, then they're probably they'll stop in first. They actually they each have a jurisdiction, and they notice things. So if you've done something physically on the exterior, that's when they might knock on your door. More than likely, you've done something on the interior that is questionable. However, in my work, I got a lot of calls from people who got stop work orders because they started projects in their homes or in their commercial spaces that required a permit. And they didn't know, they honestly just didn't know. They just didn't know.
So could you talk a little bit about, this is definitely, well, we probably know what is definitely needs a permit, but are there some things that don't?
Yes, there are definitely, and again, I'll go back to that. There's a difference between whether you're in a commercial space or a residential space. Anything in particular that's going to affect life safety, as we're talking about tonight, is definitely going to be a permit. So if you're altering any exterior openings on a commercial space, particularly if there is one of those glowy exit signs that Sue pointed out earlier, you're definitely going to need a permit. They want to make sure, again, that people can get out in a fine. That's the number of people. The city inspectors are not there to make your life difficult. They're there to ensure your safety, and if it's a commercial building, the safety of people who you invite into your space, the public.
I can talk about our personal experiences. We own our building. When we were trying to get our building permits, we got a lot of runaround from the city at the beginning, but then we called our alderman, who made it really a lot easier. Because the guys were looking at it, it's like, well, in a home, if you're residential, you have a bathroom and kitchen. It's like, okay, here's the bathroom, here's the kitchen. But then they kept saying, this isn't a house, it's a commercial building. But it's not a commercial building, so we kept going in circles. But once they figured out it was just us and we weren't renting it to other people, they didn't care if we killed ourselves. But they only care if you have tenants, then they were there to protect the tenant's safety. So they were very, very accommodating. Once they
part of the, and I didn't read all the articles by any means, but part of the ghost ship problem, was like, well, the city of Oakland wasn't following its own procedures in doing regular inspections. That was one criticism, besides all the things that the artists were doing to make the interior not safe.
In every commercial space, you're going to need a certificate of occupancy. In almost every, in the city of St. Louis, and in almost every residential situation, you're going to need a conservation inspection. There are very few exceptions in the city of St. Louis areas, like St. Louis Hills.
I'd also add to that, if your landlord did not get, or if you're a landlord, if they did not get an inspection, it is illegal in the city to collect any rent. So when folks call with problems about their landlord, my first question is, in the city? Yes. Call up the city, find out if there was an inspection and occupancy permit. Because if not, now we've got a lot of leverage to go back against the landlord and hammer them, because it's and you could actually countersue and get all the rent you paid for the last 3 years back. Do they award it? Rarely, but it's a possibility.
People have questions about sort of dealing with the city, because if we don't, we could push on. or something that you've encountered that you're willing to talk about?
Have the fire safety equipment requirements of the city changed recently?
Not that I know of, no. As a matter of fact, we're still in 2009 IBC, which is quite.
The county is upping the code.
Yeah.
They haven't done it yet.
And that's something we haven't talked about, is that here's how I always explain the difference between the city and the county. The city is much more lenient with things. Unfortunately, it's more about personalities between plan reviewers and inspectors. You can go in and talk to one plan reviewer and get something approved that you might not get approved through another plan reviewer. And then once the building is under construction, you might get an inspector that says that doesn't work for me. So you got to argue with them and say the plan reviewer said so, and he'll say, I don't care what the plan reviewer said. I'm not going to give you an occupancy permit unless you do this, this, and this. And each one of them has these little peccadillos about, the fire caulk or the, these little things that you just got to know.
It was the last seminar I went to.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. The thing about the county is, even though there's now apparently only 89 municipalities instead of 90, Bonita Park, I think, and Bonita Hills just consolidated. But the thing about the county is, some of the municipalities have their own building permit. Well, each one of them has a different level of approvals that they do between the building permits, and there's also mechanical, electrical, plumbing permits and reviews that they do. And most of that is done at the county level, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. But what is great about the county, even though they are much more strict about following the code, is that they have checklists. And it's like, if you do this, 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 and this, you're going to get your permit. Where in the city, again, it's about personalities, and it's about knowing. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to know your alderman, and that's a completely different issue. But it aggravates me in some way. I've lived in the city of St. Louis for 20 years. I've been active, involved in my neighborhood, and I know politicians. I know city officials. And if I got to get something done, I can get it done. But I think it's unfair. I think it's really, really unfair that the general, citizen can't just call up the refuse division and get their alley cleaned up. That they have to call their politician as a middleman, their alderman, and have them do it. Or if they're having trouble getting a permit, that you have to. Unfortunately, that's sort of where we're at.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, so you mentioned that the inspector can show up if somebody complains.
Mm-hmm.
Is it also possible for them to show up, like, say there's a fire or something happens in the
Oh
building,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
red flag or
They will,
something
and
like
they
that?
will. If there is a fire, the building division will come
Or
and
some
they
sort
will.
of incident
They
that someone
will.
will see
They will
something.
more than likely condemn your building. And I have done a ton of fire safety inspection reports where there's the building inspector comes in and he's not going to take liability for it. He sees a charred joist or a beam and he says, you got to get an architect to tell me that's safe. I mean, he can probably see it's safe, but
We actually had a situation in our building where our elevator motor caught on fire, but it's a building that has, a 1 foot plus cement floors and walls and everything. So we actually, the fire was contained, and we never heard boo after that. So we actually had like a big, sort of a pretty big fire, but because it was in this little cement box on the top of the building. Was that lucky, or since nobody's here?
Well,
That's why it's designed that way.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, I know that,
Right.
but I'm just curious, because this happened years ago, and nothing ever happened.
I don't think there's a
Is
mechanism.
there, was it in the city?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, it's just sort of like everything's
Yeah, I don't-
fine.
yeah.
Yeah, that was our feeling.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
there's an official mechanism, but
Right.
they will.
They
They know.
Yes.
They know.
Yeah, okay.
And they probably just decided that wasn't worth their time.
Right, but in theory, if they saw something that was a concern, that would alert the inspector.
Correct. And most of the times it happens when you go to get an occupancy permit following an incident like that. So they'll come in and if there's a change of tenant or a change of ownership.
If you become a business and you're selling something and you have people coming.
Yeah, no, we're not never going to.
Right, but it can happen if your neighbors start seeing that there's no place to park and they get mad and they call, and that can trigger an inspection and a ticket too, because if you're not a business classification, you're supposed to pay higher utilities, higher, your own dumpster fees and everything, so that's the risk.
Yeah.
One or two more questions, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say again, I know a lot of you are probably living in sort of a hybrid situation, much like you are, where the city doesn't really understand the difference between the residential and commercial space.
Well, that's actually an interesting issue because that goes into property value. Because the building, I've been partial owner of a building for a long time now, and our neighborhood has changed quite a lot, but our space is still raw space. So the value of our building, because it's all artist studios. And so it's a funny thing, because if you look, they don't have a way to classify us, and they never have, and I don't think they do yet, so.
So it's when you have different kinds of neighbors then. If you think about Larry Rice's situation, he's been there forever. No, back before downtown kind of came back, nobody cared. And now that there's nicer residential places around it, they're disturbed by what they see, and he's getting kicked out because of code violations.
Oh, no, it's done.
Yeah.
He was kicked out about a month ago.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, it depends on where you are and who your neighbors are and how vocal they are.
Our neighbors are slew. We've been holding tight for a long time, but we keep a very low profile. But it's interesting, because it does kind of keep us in this gray area of what is this, because we're not historic. We're right outside, we're in the Locust small business district, and on the edge of Grand Center. And we're just sort of in this gray area. We've been there for decades. But our property value is assessed on a raw space still.
Then you're lucky, right?
Yeah, we're lucky. Yeah, we're super lucky.
And we did go through a lot to get insurance. If anybody's curious about insurance, after talking about insurance.
I have a question. So I support a lot of organizations that are in rural Missouri, and they have a lot of fires out there too. And so I'm kind of want to figure out, it's like best practices for organizations that operate on job plan or Sykeston.
Well, what's interesting, and it's all going to depend, and I'll go back to my experience as an architect, it's all going to depend upon whether they're in a jurisdiction that enforces the building code. We don't have a statewide building code in the state of Missouri. I think there's still only a handful of 5 states that do not have a statewide building code. So literally in most counties in the state of Missouri, you can build whatever you want and put yourself at whatever risk you choose. And unfortunately, you can put the public at risk as well. So there is a push. What best practice? I mean, I think they talk really about what sort of the practical best practices are about just keeping a safe environment for yourself.
Separate yourself from positive hazards, especially if you're sleeping and working. You want your sleeping space to be fully contained and separate from where you're making the mess.
Okay.
That's sort of the first thing, and then storage and exits. There's lots of exits. 2 is a minimum.
Yeah, and I can give you the official line about whether you should be sleeping in your studio space. But I understand, I consider myself a bit of an artist and a little bohemian and a bit of a edge pusher, So I would never tell you that, or at least be naive enough to think that a lot of people aren't sleeping in their studios or using them as living spaces, but just have some common sense about exactly these things that they were talking about.
I think we'll leave this part for there. I'm watching the clock. Because we still need to hear from the Gateway Burners. Total switching of gears.
Are you guys ready?
I think we can.
Thank you, Dustin.
Well, yeah, different perspective.
Right.
So we're up here with a very different line of experience than everything you've heard before. We both do interact with fire all the time as part of the art, in one form or another. Alan, you mentioned your shop, of course, which just goes to a lot of the stuff you're describing. And I also we should talk, because I think we're neighbors. I bought a building not far from you guys, but it's also.
I'm in the neighborhood.
Oh my goodness. Right. That's mixed use land.
Right. That's what I have is mixed use, to be able to do what I do. Some of the things, I'm going to take a quick elaboration. We do woodworking in there. I have a dust collection system. I also have a dust filter that can run, and I only have 2 remotes in my house. We're both in the shop. One turns on the dust collector, the other one handles the filter, and that can run for 8 hours and suck a lot of the dust out of the air. Lung hazard, also fire hazard. You can set the air on fire if you have a sufficient amount of dust hanging in it. So another function. Also with your fire extinguishers, make sure you turn them over like once a year, bounce them, get the chemicals lock free because they'll lock down. You'll shoot and there's nothing there. Yeah. So just that would be my asides that way, but we deal with fire.
We do with fire a lot, and a lot of the little details like that you can come up with. You mentioned the quality of your fire extinguishers is a big one. Fire safety when you're doing art, performance art, fire performing, where you're going out, you see people spinning tools and in public spaces, indoors and outdoors. When you're doing that, you have to deal with think of the fumes for the public. You have to think about lighting yourself on fire. You have to think about lighting other people on fire, and think about lighting the space on fire. What's that?
AVP, audience venue performer is the order of operation when you think of fire safety, when you're a performer.
Right. And you got to be prepared with all of that. And those people, Elizabeth McDonald's also has a lot of experience, a lot more than myself and us with public fire performing. But then you're concerned with all those elements, and you're going to have first aid with you at all times to some small extent, fire extinguishers and other area equipment. So you have to constantly be prepared with the right kind of safety equipment and gear for what you're doing with the fires you have at the time, and it's always different. Those are fuel fires, and then you can have light environments on fire, and you go to the fire extinguishers, those are AB fire extinguishers, or ABC better. A lot of the little ones, small ones with plastic valves, we were in one space we were at where there was a fire. A lot of those came out of use and tried to discharge them, and 30% of them worked. 70% of them failed.
And the performer was severely injured.
Huge. So you turn them all the time, buy nicer ones is really important. And be prepared to wear, I wouldn't like fires in this because I'm sure it's not.
And polyester, you don't work with polyester around it too. So yeah, as you're grinding and doing things, cotton clothing, something that's not going to burn up on you, because polyester, if it melts, it fries into your skin. Cotton you can at least heal out of.
We could talk more about the dangers of...
Can I?
Please do.
So these two they build large art installations and then burn them down, right? So we do it at festivals, we do it, sometimes we'll do Lohr will host burn barrel parties where people weld and carve their own burn barrels, turn it into sculptures and then burn things inside of it. And both of them have done fire suppression at large events where things that are multiple stories high, 2 to 3 stories high, and can fit many people during the day for climbing and all kinds of activities at night become burned, and there's several of them in full-on fire suits with fire sticks and huge water and dry chemical fire extinguishers, working the perimeter of that fire as it burns and poking and making sure that things fall in. So if a person, and I don't know if there's any artists in this room, if anybody's interested in doing that level of fire art, then we
have a lot to share about that. It's far outside of the scope of 5 minutes.
Right.
That's to be your part of the conversation.
But the interaction I think that you can best share is the interaction with the fire department, with you know, when you're doing things like that, how that process works. I don't know if you want
That, you know, it's pretty interesting you mentioned that, because I've actually done, the Arctic Festival happens every year in the riverfront, and we've done a sculpture that is multiple people heights tall, and we burn to the ground every year since 2003 or 4, I have to check notes. And that's with the collaboration and partnership with the St. Louis Fire Department. And we have to do, and their permitting system and code system doesn't have anything in it about, hey, if some people come to the fire department, knock on the door and say, we'd like to burn this big pretty sculpture, we're like, we don't have a form for that. So then we have to have that personal relationship and dialogue and documentation about what our safety procedures are going to be and how we're going to be careful and how we're going to do this. Every year I filled out a bonfire permit, which has on it which is their definition of a fire burnt on the ground, instead of in a contained vessel or an elevated metal platform, on the ground that is no more than 5 feet wide and no more than 5 feet tall. And the largest thing I burnt inside the city limits was 43 feet tall, which is about as tall as this building, if not a little taller. So again, that dialogue is a big part of it, going there with a plan and with care and with a lot of safety precautions in place. And thought of is what they value the most. And then you have to come up with an agreement, and they're going to bring people.
And they always come down, they bring their fire trucks before we burn, and then they stay and watch, and make sure that it gets contained, and they're really awesome, and they get out and kind of fraternize with us. But if you're having a festival, just know that the fire department is different than the fire inspector. Actually, that's completely changed. The building, Department of Public Safety, I think, is where the fire inspector is housed now, is that correct? And he's to both parts, fire department and public safety. Is that accurate?
There's building
People
inspectors,
individuals.
there's a bunch of different tiers of inspectors.
Right.
But they're in public works.
But the fire department, they're more amenable to like, oh, you want to have a festival and you want to have, burn barrels or something. Don't be afraid of them, because they've been dealing with us for over a decade. So.
And that's the city. Right now, we're dealing with Chesterfield.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And we're going up there. So everything being equal, hopefully funding will happen next week. And we're August 5th, so yes, make sure you come on out. Should be August 5th.
I thought it was 6th.
Whatever. It's a Saturday. It's that Saturday, 5th or 6th. And we should have a 32-foot flying saucer out there that will be about 12 foot tall. Yeah, we'll be setting that on fire. That'll be interactive art for people to go play in. So we're working with somebody brand new. But some of the relationships we've also built, and this has been part of your thing, we're known in the city. They know the inspectors. The phone calls were made, I'm sure, 10 minutes after they left. Say, it's like, how good are these guys? We already had plans we turned in. It's like, here's a model plan of what we do. How many people, all sorts of things are there. So it's very doable.
Yes.
And, some of the stuff we talk about with fuel, it's like, all of my fuel sits outside. I have it in special containers. I have, yes, do I have everything to make thermite? Yes, I do, but it's all in containers, separated. Do I have enough to, yes, I could burn my house down. You do not want to hit my truck. And I can't put on those special tags on my truck, but it's that sort of thing. We carry stuff, but carrying it in the proper containers is a big deal, working with it that way. When spontaneous combustion happens, I've worked with magnesium, had to catch on fire while I was working on it. It's kind of crazy. That requires a Class D fire extinguisher. You cannot put that out with an A, B, or a C. It's a Class D.
Anyway, we could talk about fun stories about
Right,
this
but
probably
we
at
won't.
length.
How'd you get that stronger, like?
It wasn't about fire.
Yeah.
But some
And
of the
they're filming.
things, if you are going to do things with fire, consider your weather. When we're out there at Chesterfield, I was already asking the fire marshal, which way is my predominant wind? So I know if I'm going to light something, I know which side to light on. It could vary on me. Okay, we're going to do it at night. It means the wind's going to drop. You die on. It's more likely than not. What's our weather? We've got storms coming in. We've got rain. It's been dry for a long time. So we're looking at, could things catch on fire on us very easily? And as we also talked about, the people. Are they sufficiently far back that they won't get fried? Or if the effigy falls over, is everybody safe with, even with a splatter zone? And understanding what we've set on fire. Just the idea, it's like we try and use a lot of solid wood versus, let's say, like ply, just because of the vapors, the gas coming off of it. Here and there, we do use things, but we take all our plastics out. We take everything that really shouldn't be burning off, unless it's, let's say, like a guide wire that we have to have there, and maybe it's plastic coated. And we keep our fuels simple. And understanding, this is, now we're getting into chemistry. If you understand the flash points of what you're working with, your accelerants, it's a big deal. Because some things are cooler. If you're working with kerosene, it's a much cooler fire in general than if you're working with acetone. And so it's understanding some of that.
So, fire. There's a reason every one of the expressions we have about something bad happening is like a fire metaphor. Oh, careful, you're playing with fire. Careful, you're going to get burned, because it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
So we always try to be very...
Well, I think too, like something we talked about too, it's really a collaboration. There's a big team that does this stuff. It's not like one artist is doing everything, is control of everything. Because like Nova was saying, you're thinking about your audience, you're thinking about the winds, you're thinking about all these different things. So we're talking about collaborative teams that work together, and everybody, it's really a well-organized thing. So most artists are not going to pop out of their studio and do something big with fire.
Wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, it's very, that would be
But
highly unusual,
we
unless they're
have-
really wealthy and can hire whoever they need, but
Right.
it is a team sport.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
something that we'll-
And even people doing small stuff, it becomes a team effort. There's an artist or two that will be doing some flame toy work, so propane work. And they've already been working with us to understand how do you make this and keep it safe. While they're operating it, they'll be there with a fire extinguisher, shut-off valves, everything they need, full plan. And then there's at least one or two other people standing nearby to keep people away. And if something does go wrong, they can yell and it can get turned off. So you're never out, you should never be out on your own when you're playing with fire. And even for some of the work like we do, a lot of our stuff is not UL approved. And so I know the architects are going to know what that is, but Underwriter's Laboratory. So those are the guys that make sure like your toaster, everything's supposedly going to work right with it. Well, none of the stuff we do has that. There's no such thing. But what we do is we go through with checklists and we say, do you have the right kind of valves, the right kind of hosing, do you have the right kind of pipe? Have you thought about everything you need to do and go over the product with it and just have leaks in it anywhere? So that if anything does go wrong, we're able to look at the fire marshal and say, it's been fully inspected, everything is the right kinds of materials. If a valve blew up, I can't prevent that. That would be a manufacturer mistake. There again, that's some of the insurance work and other things, where's the liability going?
Yeah. Anyway, good time. Any questions about some of the kinds of things we do that you might be interested in? Or how it affects safety? Yes?
So I'm the next up, and so
Oh.
really, the next up, I want you would you, so if, I picked up these extinguishers without any knowledge, and it sounds like I did it wrong.
Oh.
So I was thinking about the small one as, you put it in your backpack,
Mhm.
if you're doing
Let
something.
me tell you, those things rock, because
Yeah.
you know why?
Yeah.
You can have it anywhere.
Yeah.
You can have those anywhere, and you're never gonna go, oh, this fire extinguisher is too big and heavy, I'm not going to bring it. That, you just shove it in your
Okay.
pocket and have a
Okay,
fire
good.
extinguisher. That's
So,
it.
and there are also two different kinds of those bigger kinds,
Mhm.
and maybe you can explain to people who would take them,
I mean,
what
any
they
extinguisher is better than none. Grab one
Right.
or push it.
Yeah, please. And then also, the most important thing I think tonight is that we all reach out to the people who didn't come. Because I think everyone here probably knows somebody where they've been in their space and they thought, this is an accident waiting to happen.
Right.
And none of those, I don't see anyone that I was thinking
Probably
that they
not.
live in an accident waiting to
There's
happen.
probably, the one thing, the only real tip,
So many.
You can spend as much money on fire extinguishers as you want to, and you can spend a ton of money, you can go to a professional place, refillable,
And we should get into that
certifiable.
one because it is a little bit of code. If you have a commercial space, you have to have at least 5 pounds.
Yeah.
These will not count as a fire extinguisher to the fire department in a commercial space.
Main thing, sorry, the
A
great
great
thing
thing.
I've always heard is, that I've heard from fire marshals, inspectors, is if your valve is metal, it's gonna be far more reliable than plastic. That's the only biggest tip I know to look at when it is metal. These, And this, I love these. I don't have any of these, but I kind of want to have one in my car and in my other car and like in every corner of my life. I think they're fantastic. You can have it in every bag. Any pile of risky equipment, you can throw one of those. I think that's fantastic. And in the kit, this, I would be less likely to buy these. It's plastic. The plastic is more vulnerable to expansion and contraction. The temperature is just plastic, it breaks down and it's gonna leak. And then it's not gonna work one day. So I would way recommend that before I would recommend this.
Right. I know the one you took out was rechargeable. I don't know if those
Was it?
are. Yeah, this one is a rechargeable.
I
don't know that that one is. I know that the one with the metal head on it is.
There's no such thing
And
as
that's-
plastic rechargeable.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a cost savings again. Oh, you did have to use it. A charge isn't that much.
Yeah, and those, but any extinguisher is way better than no extinguisher.
Where do you get them recharged?
That's harder than you think. There are, you know what, there is little ABC fire extinguisher recharging places all over the city, and you'll see Abacos, and they're tucked in weird little plazas.
Yeah.
Go on the internet, or you know what, get out that old hardbound internet, the yellow pages, and look under fire safety, they'll have them listed.
The company that I work with is Fire Pro. They're around the city and the county, and they recharge, they come out and inspect, like in commercial zone, if you're doing that, yearly inspection happens, and that's what they do. And it doesn't cost that much. I mean, I had a 5-pound and a 10-pound in my space, and yeah, they come out once a year, and for $35, they take care of everything. I need new ones, they just put new ones in, it's charged, it's inspected, I get, you know, all the blessings, and it's just done. Saves me.
So how are we gonna connect with the people who didn't come? Anybody have any ideas on this? I mean, this should be the beginning of something, not the last bit. Okay.
You're up.
Yeah, I'm Sarah. So does anybody have any ideas of how we get people to, I mean, I personally know people who are in spaces where they don't have a permit to be in those spaces. They don't, that spaces that have been condemned. So, obviously, I don't want to call the cops on them, but I do want to get them connected to resources to protect themselves, and I wonder how.
Make a resource pack and hand it out, give them a free fire extinguisher. I mean, the thing is, we don't operate within the systems. You can't. This guy's talking about insurance. You can't have enough insurance. I know people who run fine art businesses who cannot insure the contents of their business, and they are top shelf people. It's not financially viable. People look at the arts, and I'm not going to go on and on, but people look at the arts as some financially viable business. You know what? Maybe. The percentage of the people who can operate in that realm of respectability is like infinitesimal. Otherwise, you got to hand it out, you got to make sheets. I mean, I don't know, like it's grassroots. You just have to talk to your friends and give them stuff.
But you're right, and I mean, I agree with you. You just have to know, listen, some kind of businesses, I just fielded calls today, for like the third time in a few years. A client of mine, they just closed down, but they owned a drop school, skydiving school. There's no such thing as insurance. There is insurance for artists. There is no such thing as insurance for a drop school. So every 2-3 years, they get sued by some idiot who got injured on landing, and they sign these monstrous waivers. There is no insurance. Sometimes you have to self-insure. Sometimes you have insurance, and it simply doesn't pay. Okay, I'm part owner of a business in Farmington. And he talked before, the architect was talking about codes. It's in St. Francis County. No codes. And we had an old barn that we added on to, and we had some Hoosier electrician who apparently put a staple through a big electrical cable, burned our barn down. And the firemen came and watched the place burn. Why? Because they were afraid of going close, because it's a firearms school, and we had a safe in there with a monstrous amount of firearms and explosives. Wow. The firemen were idiots, because they should have known that this stuff just can't go boom the way, because it was all stored properly. Whatever. It happens. You're uninsured. The point being, folks have got to know that sometimes just basic tenant policy, if it doesn't cover the artwork, it can cover your stuff. You
Yeah,
know,
like
it might
us.
not cover the art, but at least you get your TV, your clothing, your couch replaced. You know?
There are spaces though, I mean, I
Spaces,
know of
yeah.
some as well, that if people knew that people were actually living there, then there's no way they can get insurance, they can't.
Yeah, I mean.
Well,
I mean,
and it's-
so
it's
so
worse
then
than
it
that.
becomes about harm reduction.
Right, and
I mean,
it's
it
about
does,
people
because-
not losing their homes.
Right.
It's about keeping
Or not
keeping
dying. I
quiet.
mean, really,
Yeah,
first
right.
priority, no death.
Well, I mean, except if people are not aware of the
First priority.
ramifications of their actions, like just, it's about education. You can educate people to the point, but you have to remember, people are autonomous. You know, are they gonna be in a space to have the space? Sure. Are they gonna be in the space and have the space and know it's dangerous? Sure. You know, and there's only so much you can do. I mean, you know, and you don't wanna say anything, you don't wanna call the city, and you don't wanna ask questions. The last thing you wanna do is ask questions or get anybody near your space. Because not only are you vulnerable, your tenants are vulnerable, everybody is vulnerable, you know. The best thing you can do is own your damn space and protect it. That is the best advice for any artist.
Well, and I know people who are, you know, homeless when they're not in their space. And that space is not a space that is in any way safe, including sometimes no electricity, no running water, but then there's sometimes fires in the winter. There are shared living spaces some of us may know about that are cooperative spaces that where only through their fireplace do they even have a source of heat.
Right.
And that happens in this city on enough that there are people that I think some of us could probably reach. I would love to form more of a cohesive group of trying to reach some of those people with resources. And maybe the resources are that, just the information, and maybe they're just handouts. But I think there should be something ongoing, because that fear of our creative people dying is.
Well, what if there was a social network of people that know what you're supposed to do, that can help go in and say, don't coil your extension cords, but we're not the police, or we're not the fire marshal?
Through the VLAA, maybe, that the VLAA perhaps would store some information
Or
on
just,
hand that you
or
could,
train people.
or critical mass for the arts. I mean, I'm not sure what organization we would use, but.
More of a grassroots. peer to
Has to be
peer.
grassroots.
Yeah,
I mean,
peer-to-peer.
for instance, we know somebody who lived in a space, he was young, he was a train hopper and an artist, and he moved into this space that was super rough, left his dog and his stove burning. I mean, this was a space that nobody should have
Well,
been.
it was a cast iron Franklin style
Yeah,
stove
sturdy,
intended to warm an
you'd
area
think, right.
in a concrete and brick building,
And
and it burned down.
burned completely down.
Sparks.
And the dog
The
died.
work
So
was
he was out, he wasn't there, but thank God for that. But so that's just an example of like, how would you tell this guy? You know, I don't.
You should trip up here because
We have.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Two ideas. So when I first came in, I thought about, oh, I hope I'm one of the people who wants a fire extinguisher. I'm gonna take it home and I'm gonna post my cute dog next to it and publicly shame everyone on Facebook saying there was a meeting tonight. 17 people were in that room, but 6 of them were presenters. Where the hell were you?
Yeah.
Right? But I feel like that's a tier 1 sort of teeny tiny little nothing of a solution. What would be like far many tiers ahead of that would be for like volunteer lawyers and accountants for the arts, or someone, critical mass, someone sponsoring the shooting and making of an informational video of like one of those little scrubby spaces that's communal off of like Cherokee Street or something, and like reaching out to those people and being like, let us come in with our lighting and a video cam and just like shoot, you know, for half an hour with someone who knows what they're doing, and like find 5 or 6 things, correct them on camera, and then make it into a 5-minute video, share it on Vimeo, share it on, you know, through Instagram and other places. And if it's like a nice little video that's 5 minutes, then you're gonna reach thousands of people, and hopefully, instead of just 17 people.
Yeah, that is grant worthy.
Yeah.
It is, that would be a neat project.
Yeah, and that's one of those,
Really
obviously, it's shot somewhere, no references to the outside world,
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
your studio.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Not
saying.
even the
Previous-
outside
Someone,
door.
someone's studio could become like really like safer within an hour's time,
Sure.
but it would be a practical example to teach dozens of other spaces.
I can't see shaming people, I can't support that,
But,
actually. I mean, personally, I just feel like you can offer information, and you can say, hey, look at this great stuff I learned. That's just me. I mean, I don't think that shaming works.
And also, I think, I would say that probably this young lady in plaid would agree with me, that people unfortunately are idiots. I think you said that, something to that effect. Every property I've ever had, whenever I talk to my tenants, I hear beeping in the background. What is that beeping? I know exactly what the beeping is. The friggin' smoke detector. They can't replace a 9-volt battery. Okay? That 9-volt battery run, because most of these houses are old enough, they're not hardwired. So a smoke detector, 9-volt battery, and they could die. And it's not just poor folks. It's not just poor folks. I had somebody in my, well, I understand that. $20 you get a smoke detector.
I got a couple that I can't even get the fucking thing open.
So again, they cost $20 at Home Depot for a smoke detector, $50 for a CO detector.
If you can get the damn thing down.
And you can't fry
You just
pork
leave
chop
it
in
there.
your kitchen
Leave the
without
old one
it
there.
going
You
off.
could use double-sided tape and stick it up. If you got a ladder, reach the ceiling, you could screw it in, you could stick it in. And it's not reserved for poor people or artists or whatever. I live in New City. Here, we had a family, very smart, educated people. The dad, who's long since passed away now, but this is 15 years ago, they had a fire. By happenstance, they weren't at home. But he's a PhD, MD, and really smart people, and they didn't have any working smoke detectors, and their house burned down. You know, simple things. But if people aren't smart enough to get smoke detectors,
okay, so of course there are going to be people who choose not to do things, and of course there are going to be people who don't think of it or who don't care, but for those of us who've been thinking since Ghost Ship about how much we don't want this to happen again, or we don't want it to happen here, we're in spaces where we love the people, I wonder, is this a group of people that has some energy to put toward maybe the video, maybe going to art events with things to hand out. I mean, in our next issue we'll have an article in All the Art, but that's not a huge thing either.
I think it's yes and. I think we should do all of that and just, talk to people on a case-by-case basis. I mean, we all know artists, and we have this information, so why not just share it with them? Like you were saying, this is a great grocery store to go to.
I mean, it's so tough. I mean, I'm here. It's so tough because we're looking at a lot of I think one thing that the city has going for it is we don't have the premium space that like Oakland has. People are more spread out. There aren't as many people who've been using the same spaces for years and years and years and years and years where the stuff builds up. And there aren't that many artists in this town. The problem is lots of the buildings are old. Lots of our homes are old. The cost of upgrading electrical, the cost of doing all this, you can say don't put 6 things in a plug. That's the only plug that works in a 1,200 square foot space. Let's be real. So, it's a question of, we're artists. How do you reach us? It's like we're talking about like us, like we're from Mars. It's like these are our friends. These are our
that's why I suggested
call
that
it when you see it.
talk to people on a case-by-case basis because
Yes.
we know these people.
Yes, call it when you see it.
You know how to talk to these people.
Yes,
to
but
us,
right.
right?
But I mean, a lot of it comes back to the people who are owning these derelict buildings. The problem is they're not going to upgrade. They can't upgrade. If they do upgrade, the rent's going to go up. That person's it's not going to be a $100 space anymore. It's going to be a $600 space. So it's real tough, and it's a real case-by-case thing in this
But
city.
in places like, I don't
What
know
are the
that I want to
spaces you're
say the
thinking
names
about?
of spaces, but
Do you want me to turn this off?
for a second,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Make this safer because this staircase is wobbling. I mean, I have direct examples of where we live. So we have those examples. He has those examples at his house. I know So it really becomes a conversation about. What we do, I think, is can you come over and help me knock down this deck because it's not safe for me to walk on. Can you come over and help me? Whatever. I have asbestos in my walls. I need to build a clean room. I can't afford the $2,000 it's going to cost to You know what I mean? It does have to
But
be
the
things like this. You can do the
23-year-old
education, but.
who's doing this, and we know some of these 23-year-olds who, they're not gonna go to art school either. They're making stuff, maybe they will eventually, but.
They won't learn it in art school anyway. No one's gonna talk about this stuff in art school. So
Right, I mean,
that's-
potential hazards of your materials is about the most you
I
can
do
teach
that in
them.
architecture school. They gotta learn, you gotta learn the way you learn. I mean, I hate to be blunt here, but I mean, the guy who's running GCAD, he's awesome. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that it's not safe, and he's saying, come and go as you please. I mean, if I was writing an article about any kind of alternative spaces, I would be front and center. You are responsible for yourself. And if you're not willing to be responsible for yourself, you might be taking down this beautiful thing you
But I think
you
it's
don't
okay
care about,
to
you know?
walk into that space as another creative person and say, hey, do you need some help making this safer?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I was trying to get to, is like, I think it's not just, hey, your space is unsafe, I noticed that your stair is wobbly. It's, hey, I noticed that your staircase is about to fall to the left a little. Can I come over, can we create on Saturday I'll bring some beer and we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Like we'll put some lag bolts into the
Some
wall.
of us can't make your stairs safe.
When you go to the Open, you take a fire extinguisher and
Yeah.
say, these were free.
Yeah, so that's what I feel like I could do.
Or
I mean,
smoke
yeah.
detectors even,
Yeah.
Or put write a great article in your publication. I mean, we all have something to offer that, conversation.
We can't say enough about smoke detectors. You know what the thing about smoke detectors? They're only good for warranted for 7 to 10 years, depending on the brand. And you know what makes them fail? Dust. Show me an art studio that doesn't have a lot of dust.
That's true.
It's there, so how do you, and then you gotta test them, so really they need to be maintained aggressively. That's really tough for
That's
anybody
really
to
tough.
do, let alone in a high-risk environment like an art studio.
I mean, I don't think anybody has the intention of somebody falling through the stairs at an art opening, or somebody coming to buy jewelry or whatever and having something happen to them. I mean, it's never like that.
Yeah, but the intention wasn't
Like,
for 36
it's-
people to burn to death either. Like, that's the whole, thing that started this. If these conversations were had, and
What?
people walked in and said, you don't have, I mean, I know someone in this room who's gone into a space and said, why does the door open in and not out? Why don't you have exit signs and you're having huge parties? Why, you know what I'm saying? Like, this person feels comfortable saying that to his friends. Why can't we each do that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
And in that case, I wouldn't know those things to say.
I know, but
And
but
a
there
lot
are
of
some
things
us
that we were
do.
told, like, I don't understand how people, our lawyer friend, I don't understand how people don't know about wires. Well, I learned a lot.
Right,
about-
right, right.
I mean, I personally have put things, I'm sure, that were too powerful on the small wires.
I have a lot of questions about, like in a lot of artist spaces that I've been to, and even some poor rental spaces, like as residential apartment rentals, where spaces are having trouble with water and bad roofing and like water getting in, and maybe, does that have any impact on like the electrical systems besides just like crumbling foundations over time and just issues with storms and stuff? What about like fire impact or fire safety impact, even when it's not raining, the water's not coming in, it stays in the walls, it comes down through other levels, what?
You end up with something called dry rot.
Okay.
And then actually, the mold is one function. But the whole concept is your wood starts to rot from something like that. It's no longer structurally sound. And that's where like your staircase goes in, and your floor collapses. You can have mold, which then starts growing in, let's say, like some of the joists and stuff, and it collapses it out also. So
Or it
that's
can
just,
cause you breathing problems.
right, right.
Pneumonia, bronchitis,
I mean,
asthma, or worse.
Our building too, we have collapsing sewers outside our building.
Mhm.
So we have water that comes into our basement. It doesn't pay for us to invest in anything because the city's crumbling outside our basement. So, I mean, the water issue is a huge issue. We have a creek running through our elevator shaft. It's always been like that, so it's like we're dealing with external, forces that are beyond any of our control also.
I just sort of wonder if it like can lead to an electrical system or like
Yes.
other
Sure,
systems
yeah.
having far more
Water that's in
likelihood.
the electrical systems, and then there's corrosion, and then they're failing, and then there's sparking,
Yeah.
and then you're,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like artists with bad roofs over their spaces or homes, or like that's a dime a dozen in this town.
Right.
Nothing's worse
Just
than
rolling.
water.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
Wire's
Well,
got
actually,
nothing.
some of the
That's a
truly
landmark
non-wiring
issue.
is actually the safest wiring we have.
Yeah, that would be a landlord issue.
Yeah, and you know.
So here's what I'm thinking, while people have beer,
Yeah.
what about just putting on, there's a sign in form. What about writing next to your name, if there's something that you think should be done, and if there's something you're willing to do, so that we can just have a record of ideas. You know, if it doesn't go any further, those of us who put it together, this part together, will have tried a little bit, and there will be a little bit of a feeling like, well, but you know, I think for me, I know what I'll be doing. I'm going to be handing equipment to people because that's all I know I can do.
I have a quick question for Sue.
Yes.
I was surprised that you guys usually don't have lectures this time of year. Why don't you do that, have lectures throughout the summer? I've always wondered about that.
Partly because I am not here in the summer.
Oh,
It's a
no.
good reason.
Okay. Well,
So
there you
we're
go.
trying to figure out how we can overcome that. So.
Good job, Sarah.
Yeah,